Well, thank you.
Of
I'm always happy to be here.
course, thank you. Uh, we have been discussing how our attitudes affect our altitude. And today, more specifically, she's going to be focusing on one particular cognitive distortion that impacts our attitude, which in turn affects our altitude, and how this self-sabotaging distortion needs to be corrected, and how we can find ways to circumvent or to correct it. Before we get started, let me just say a few words that we want you to be feel free to interact, to ask questions, to participate. It's very important for the conversation. We want to get your perspective, and certainly make it an opportunity for you to learn and really to take notes as well. Take notes as you go along, because we have over 30 years of experience here with Dr. Brown. So certainly take advantage of that. So Dr. Brown, I just wanted to ask you upfront, what is this self-care for the soul? Why is that important for us to even think about it? Why even ponder this question, self-care for the soul?
Well, that's a good question. So self-care of the soul is taking care of one part of us. There are three parts to us. There is our body, our soul, which is made up of our mind, our will, our intellect, our emotions, and our imagination. And the big thing that we're going to focus on is the emotions, because the emotions affect the decisions that we make about ourselves, about other people, about the world.
Okay, so taking care of my soul is really pivotal to actually my success, because you're saying my imagination, my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions are all rolled up into this idea of the soul. Is that what I heard?
Right. Basically, the thought is affected by the other components, the will, your intellect, how well you can process things, your emotions, how well you're in control or not in control of your emotions, and then your imagination. And the imagination can run very, very wild if we
But what
allow
you're
it
saying
to.
is this is not really, for the typical person walking around every day, this is not really a sexy conversation. I mean, who goes around thinking about their imagination, their intellect, their emotions? It's not really sexy. It doesn't really appeal to you. It doesn't, make you jump to have this kind of conversation. So what would make somebody even be attracted to this kind of conversation, this kind of line of thinking? Why would what would pull them in to want to have this conversation? Because I can tell you, it's a little dry, my intellect, my soul,
let me ask you this.
Uh-huh.
How dry is it to be successful and achieve your goals in life?
Well, that's the outcome. That's not dry, of course. I want to be rich. I want to have a successful family. I want to be emotionally, I want to be whole. Those things are not dry, but I'm talking about the process to get to that is pretty dry. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, I know you're a doctor, you probably don't agree with that, but if, take away the title for a little bit of not being a doctor, isn't that a bit of a dry conversation? My intellect, my soul, my mind.
Well, the reason why it might seem dry is because in the best possible world, these would have been things that were resolved a long time ago.
It would have done what?
Been resolved a long time ago.
It would have been resolved a long time ago. Okay.
Yes. In other words, these are things that we have to go back and learn if we didn't learn properly in our early years. Okay. That's the sort of thing that keeps people stuck, thinking, well, why can't I move? Why is everybody else going ahead of me? 1 year is gone by, 2 years gone by, 10 years gone by, 50 years has gone by, and I'm still the same
50
person.
years.
Well, believe it or not, some people never ever address this. And
Wow.
so there are consequences.
And
It's
talk about,
kind of
talk
like,
about the consequences. What are some symptoms of the consequences? Well, there's so many consequences. I don't want to overwhelm you with that question because it's too big. But tonight we're going to hone in on one particular distortion that causes us to get stuck, or that shows that we need to take care of our soul, or that we're not taking care of our soul. And this one is called all or nothing thinking. Is that right?
mm-hmm.
Can you tell the audience what that means? All or nothing thinking?
Well, I think before we do that, I'd like to
Uh-huh.
give them a little background so that it will make sense.
All right.
And the background is, well, we talked about what is the care of the soul, and that's the care of the part of you that's very real, but that you don't see, but other people see it, and they see it through your attitude. And well, how do you care for your soul?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one way is to pay attention, to make time. See that boring thing? To sit down and make time and evaluate, what is my attitude? Is it working for or against me? And if it's working against me, the consequences of that is just not boring. What it is extremely painful.
The consequences of it is not that it will be dry or boring, is that it will be extremely painful. And that's usually when we run for help, right? When the pain becomes unbearable.
Yes.
Then
yes.
It's no longer dry, it's just painful.
It's just painful.
Okay.
So some people may be wondering, well, why would anybody want to choose to have a negative attitude? And it is a choice. It's not something that just descended upon you. It was a choice that may have been forced on you when you were little. And
that's a difficult reality to accept, that it's my choice when I have a negative attitude, because sometimes it just seems like things just happen in your environment and you just kind of get caught up.
Well, what happens is you develop automatic ways of dealing with things.
Mm-hmm.
But you made a choice a very long time ago about how you would deal with these various things.
But isn't it usually an unconscious choice, though?
Well, for the most part, but guess what? The consequences of it are very real. And that's why it's important to take the time to try to find out, what's going on with me? Why am I stuck? And if I'm stuck because I have a negative attitude, what it means is that I believe things about myself, about other people around me, or about the world that are not good. For myself, I believe I'm not loved and I'm not deserving. That's why people sometimes will find themselves engaging in behaviors that are not helpful, refer to it as sabotage. That's not boring. That's painful.
Well, it's not boring now, because I realize I've grown and I realize now how important it is for me to be self-aware. But if I'm not having the struggle that is very obvious, or you can be doing relatively well in life and still have these issues, right? They may be undercover because you have all of those things to disguise it. No?
It depends on the extent to which you have it. We all engage in some form of negative thinking from one time to the other. The problem is it at a place where it's interfering with your ability to live the kind of life that you want? And only you can determine that, For instance, do you want to be a part of, some social engagement? Do you want to feel that people want you around? Do you want to feel that you're in a relationship in which, you know, if you're dating, the other person understands you and you understand them?
Mhm.
Or are you going to be always arguing about something and not even being aware of what?
Okay.
And, you know, bringing it even on further to permanent relationships. Say that you're living with somebody or you're married, you know, there's will be constant arguments and fights over things that make no sense. And the reason for that is because one or both of you may be operating on inefficient information. So it's kind of like the three blind men and the elephant. You know that
Three blind
story?
man and the elephant. I've never heard this before.
Okay. Well, it's a story. It's a story about three blind men, and they were trying to describe what an elephant is. Now they're blind, they can't see, right? One is standing by the trunk. So of
Uh-huh.
course, guess what? He describes the elephant as a trunk. The other one is standing by the stomach, and he describes the elephant as the stomach. And then the other one is standing by the tail. And guess what he thinks the elephant is? The tail. And they're all three arguing. Well, guess what? They're all three wrong and they're all three right. They just can't see the full picture.
Oh, wow. And the truth is, when you think about, if you look at the discourse online about relationships, I mean, it is a major war being waged between men and women, and the needs of the men, the needs of the women. And a lot of it is just complete turmoil. And I just wonder if people took the time to have these kind of conversations about how to take care of the soul, self-care for the soul, then they'd be more aware and more cognizant of the things that may be interrogating or hijacking the altitude that they're trying to get to, including myself, the altitude I'm trying to get to in my relationship or in their relationships. Mm-hmm. So this idea of taking care of the souls, you're saying you have to pay attention to your thoughts and your feelings and what you entertain and let settle into your spirit as normal when it may very much be abnormal, but because we learned it when we were so young, we have learned to accept it as truth. Is that what I hear you saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. And anytime someone comes against what we see as truth, we're going to fight to the death. And so
and it's literally what's going on in a lot of relationships, fight to the death.
Yeah.
And then it just leaves everybody in fragments.
Right. To the destruction, basically, of the relationship. And that certainly happens with interpersonal relationships. It also happens on the job. The other day we were speaking, and there's some people who you might hire. I'm sure you don't have any employees like this, but it's possible that somebody that you may have hired is suffering from this all or nothing thinking, which means that when you say something to them, they're not listening fully to what you say. And so they're not going to carry out your wishes as you want it. And it's not because that they're trying to be mean or anything. They are just not operating with all the information. And as an employer, I don't know how long you would want to put up with someone like that, because they would be costing you money.
So this idea of the all or nothing thinking would have started back in childhood as well, or it can develop at any point along your journey?
Well, I think for the most part, it starts early in life. Negativity, I believe negativity, everything, whether it's positive or negative, everything starts early in life, Now, there could be things that people that come along and for various reasons, maybe our unmet need We allow people to influence us and tell us the sky is purple. Well, we know actually it is blue. But if you want a relationship with this person, you have to agree to purple. And if you are desperate for that relationship, you will agree to purple. And after a while, it will seem just fine. And particularly with some types of people who they make it their job to be controlling and to be controlling in a nasty way.
So it sounds to me like it's really important then to know how you wear your self-sabotage, because it sounds like everybody has some form of self-sabotage. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know that I would say everybody has some form of sabotage. I think everybody may not have the full picture. So let me give you a for instance. I'm struggling here. About the sabotage.
That's good. You're a human being just like the rest of us.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, let's look at Adam and Eve with the snake, okay? God put them in that garden and told them they could have everything in that garden except for one thing. And by the time the conversation was over, Eve was convinced that that one thing was, she had a distorted view of reality. She didn't see all of reality. She didn't know everything, and she had a distorted view of what she knows. Now,
we're speaking on Eve tonight. Remember, this is Eve Speaks platform.
Well, Eve has issues too, okay? But in other words, the reality of it is we all operate with a certain amount of distortion. And that comes from what we call sin. We don't live in a perfect world. We don't see everything. And even if we lived in a perfect world, you know what? We're not God.
But
as quiet as it's kept.
But isn't that a self-sabotage though? Why are you going around it? Why would you not call it self-sabotage? Even though because everybody has this issue, right? Some kind of distortion. So isn't it a form of self-sabotage?
Well, some people take it to another level. So that's why I'm trying to be careful with it.
Okay, so there are different levels of self-sabotage, but we all have it. And some of us don't know that we are self-sabotaging, and some of us do. Yes?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, to the extent that you're aware of reality.
To the extent that you're aware.
And what I was saying is that, well, what is reality? Some of us think we know what reality is, but all we know is the reality that we grew up with. And in society, people have gotten together to decide what is reality. And that keeps changing.
I get it. So I will still hold on to the fact that I've thought about this whole thing of, these cognitive distortions. And I recognize that unless I know how I wear my self-sabotage, how it manifests in my life, then I will continue to sabotage myself and continue to fail to reach my altitude, because I either don't know that I'm self-sabotaging, or I know it, but I'm not willing to take responsibility for my self-sabotage. I want to welcome Genevieve Queenum and Patricia Beenham. Please join the conversation. We want to make it a robust one. Today we are discussing all or nothing thinking, which is one of the cognitive distortions that hijacks our altitude. And Dr. Brown is digging deeper into this subject matter. So if you have any questions about what that means for how it may be manifested in your life or manifesting in your life, please be sure to interject at any point, because as I said, we want this to be an interactive experience. Don't be spectators, in other words. So Dr. Brown, tell us more deeply or more clearly how all or nothing thinking manifests itself. Give me a scenario, a story.
Okay, hold on. We're not there yet. All right.
You're not there yet? Okay.
We're not there yet.
What are we waiting for? Tell me.
We need to understand where unhealthy thinking comes from.
Where does unhealthy thinking come from? Okay.
It comes from trusting in people that are not trustworthy. And that could be people in your home, you know, on some level. And then later on in life, you know, sometimes even as adults, we can get very angry, bitter. Let's say you go to church, you're expecting people to behave in a certain way, and they're not being the loving people that you thought that they were. And that could lead you to see Christians in a certain way. In fact, some people who don't understand have just given up and gone in some other way.
Okay.
So past experiences of trusting people who you could not rely on.
Past experiences, so unhealthy thinking comes from, or negative thinking comes from, or what's the terminology you give it?
Both of them are right. They come from interacting with people that you can't depend on. People
interacting with people you can't depend on. Okay.
People early in life, and these people early in life, either for any number of reasons, some people have parents that have mental illness. They don't know. Or some parents have distorted thinking themselves, you know. Let's say the woman who doesn't know how to form healthy relationships. But it could be a man too, or I'm not picking on any one or the other. But let's just say the woman doesn't know how to form healthy relationships. She has children, and she has girl children, and she grows up telling her children that you can't depend on men. Now, that sounds innocent enough, but a child's mind is like a sponge, and it's soaking in that stuff, and it doesn't have the ability to evaluate anything else to see whether that thought is right or not. And so later on, even though you want the things that other people have, you know, like a good relationship and to get along, if you're thinking, I can't trust this person that I'm with, the relationship is never going to go well.
You know, as you're talking, I'm thinking about one way in which I know for sure that I engaged in all or nothing thinking. And I think it was when I was working for these different corporations for like 15 years. And I would bring the clients in, but never thought I had the capacity to actually run a business for the longest. I just didn't believe that I could, because I felt like I had to have all the ducks in a row. I had to have all the pieces figured out. And
everything had to be perfect.
I had to have it had to be right. And I had to be an engineer. I had to have the technical acumen and the sales acumen and the operational acumen. I felt like I had to have all the pieces. Otherwise, there's no way I could run a business. And at the time, my boyfriend would come to my office and say, you know, you could do this by yourself. And I'd be like, no. And I did that for like 2 years. No, I just like people. I just like talking to people. And he would say, but Angela, you can do this by yourself. You don't need these people that you're working for. But in my mind, it was exactly that. I had to have it all the pieces, or I couldn't do anything. I would just continue to work for like peanuts, rupees, so to speak. But
that's
once
the quality of life. issue.
Huh?
That's the quality of life issue.
Yeah,
While you were thinking that way, you weren't moving to where you are right now.
exactly. I was stuck in this pattern of bringing in them the sales, bringing them the revenue, but I wasn't realizing it in my life for myself. I wasn't enjoying the benefits of the talent that I had, which was to sell, because I felt like I couldn't do all the other pieces. So therefore I am no good to run a business. It's crazy how this stuff can really hold you back and keep you in stuckdom, as I call it. But the miracle is to be able to reflect back now and see that I was actually in that, but didn't know. I was in that mindset and did not know that that was what was going on with me. I had no awareness. I had no education about the distortions. I was clueless. And through the journey and coming to this point now where I'm actually, learning about these different distortions, oh, that's what that was. It fuels me to continue to have these conversations so that I can interrupt somebody's journey that they may be having, going to the same pattern of being, not enjoying the fullness of what they could be because of these kind of thinking. Because today now I run a business. I run the very business that I thought I couldn't run. I still don't have all the pieces, but the business is running quite well just by getting the additional help and support that I needed. So it's very much a very significant thing to learn and to unlearn the negative behavior so you can learn what is necessary to change and to get to the altitude. And I'm still climbing the altitude, to get to the altitude, but I am nowhere near where I was before, which was really stuck, round and round and round, chasing my tail. So this is a very worthy conversation. Genevieve, can you think of any time in your life when you felt like you had all or nothing thinking? We want to invite you into the conversation. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, it's very interesting. You said something which is important, is when you are learning something, you have to unlearn the bad thinking you had. And this is exactly what I think. Sometimes some people learn new things and good things for their life, but they keep the bad pattern they get before. And sometimes run both with them and get confused at a point because it's just like what Dr. Brown just said. When you grown up with a thinking pattern because maybe your parent told you this and this, or you grow up in a environment, a family, a culture where things go in a way, when you discover that, well, maybe it was not that right, the thing is, we don't take the time to unlearn these bad patterns and try to start learning the right one. And as long as we keep them somewhere in our mind, it may pops up again.
And I think it shows up a lot in relationships, especially because then you just see yourself going from one relationship to the next, to the next, to the next, or not cutting off people. You have a trail of people that you've cut off, whether that be platonic or romantic relationships or familial relationships. You find that there are these, sometimes I talk to people and one girl told me, I have many enemies. And you're like, why do you have so many enemies? And I'm thinking it's because she hasn't learned how to resolve the conflicts along the way. So it keeps manifesting in this constant conveyor belt of having to form new relationships.
Well, let me add one thing there. Let me add something to what you said. I think what she hasn't learned is how to love herself. You see, because when you love yourself, first of all, you have to feel like you deserve to be loved. And if you haven't been loved, there's where you feel you don't deserve to have things. And then there's where that word comes in that you talked about, sabotage. If you don't think you deserve to have something and somebody gives it to you, you're going to mess it up.
Mm.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to tie in the self-love with the all or nothing thinking. Like I'm not following the connection.
We're going to get there.
Okay.
See, we're building the foundation of the house.
Okay. All
So
right. Well, okay, let's keep building.
the other thing to be aware of in terms of negative thinking is that it not only has an effect on your soul with the bad attitude, but your spirit now is drawn to negativity.
Your spirit becomes drawn to negativity. Mm.
Yes. In other words, you're not, if you have to choose between love and hate, you choose hate. And the reason why you choose hate is because you don't trust.
But nobody's gonna go around saying they chose hate. I mean,
well, they don't say that, but if you are sabotaging yourself, how loving is that?
self-sabotage equals you not loving yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're saying, doctor.
Yes, you don't value yourself.
You don't value yourself, which means you don't love yourself. Because if you love yourself, you value yourself. So when I self-sabotage, I'm saying I don't love myself. That sounds kind of harsh.
You're saying, I don't deserve this.
I don't deserve this. I am unworthy.
Yes. And then
what about our lives?
What did you say, Genevieve?
I said, what about our lives, the life we have? I was just coaching someone today, and this lady repeat, I think, in an hour, she repeats many things, the same negative word several times. So I don't think that, from my perspective, it's not that she doesn't not love herself, but she doesn't love her life.
She doesn't love her life.
Yes.
Is it possible to love yourself and not love your life? Is that possible?
This is what I want to understand. What about those people who talk, very negatively about the life they have? They don't like their way of living. They don't like their personal organization. They are frustrated about their own growth. They are not satisfied about the quality of their life.
But that stems from somewhere, wouldn't you say, Dr. Brown? It stems from the fact that they developed the negative forms of thinking, which led to the cognitive distortions, which led to the self-sabotage, which led to the discomfort or the dissatisfaction with their lives. So it's like a chain event.
I guess a simple way to put it is these are people who have lost hope. We need faith. Well, and when I say we, I'm talking about Christians now, faith, hope, and love. Those are things that are to motivate us. People who are speaking negatively aren't motivated. Where is their hope? They feel there's no hope, and so that's why they're angry or anxious or any number of negative things. They don't, and they don't think it's possible. You see?
So it sounds to me like it's not, you cannot think about it in a silo. They are related. It's like there's a relationship between each of these categories. I don't just get up one day and say, oh, I don't like my life. Usually there are things that preceded it, or
it's an evolution.
Yes. Over time, the things compound, and then you get this big rotten cake, so to speak. But let's continue the conversation. So what else would you add to this house that we're building, Dr.
So
Brown?
then I would say the first step, we're coming on it, the first step to trying to tackle the business of not thinking and seeing properly is to begin to examine your thoughts. Do I tend to entertain positive thoughts about myself, about other people, about the world? And then, or am I entertaining negative thoughts about myself, other people in the world? It's very hard to entertain positive thoughts about other people when you don't feel good about yourself. People who don't feel good about themselves engage in all kinds of behaviors that are not so good. They gossip. They're haters. Just putting it simple, they are haters. And they're haters because they entertain a hateful spirit. And a hateful spirit does not belong to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. His is a loving spirit.
So is that the same thing as saying paying attention to your energy?
Well,
You know, people say this person has a
hold
bad
on.
energy.
Yes, when we start talking about energy and things like that, we're going into a whole nother realm. And we're going into the realm of spiritualism. And spiritualism, a lot of things can hide under that, you know? They are good spirits and they are bad spirits. They're angels and they're demons. Maybe we don't like to think in those kinds of ways, but this is what scripture says. And so, to the extent that we adhere to God and what he has to say, we're choosing, we're making a choice. We have a will, remember? We have a will and we make a choice about what kind of spirits we're going to entertain. Now, other people could call it energy because what? They don't want to call it angels. They don't want to call it demons. Why? Because they want to act like, I don't know what they want to act. They talk about entering doors to other places and all kinds of stuff.
They'd rather give it another name so they don't have to face the reality of what it is.
Well, they've made a concerted choice and effort. Actually, I had an experience with that. I was quite surprised, but you know, I'm sorry to say, it's one of your followers, one of the people here associated with Angela. I don't know the person, but I sent out a word of encouragement, which I send often, saying that we can't trust our heart. Why did I say that? Because that's what God says. He said it's wicked. It's evil above all things. And this lady—
Our hearts are deceitful beyond all things.
Yes.
Jeremiah, right?
Yes. And this woman came back and said to me, I don't believe that. And I don't know what she thought. Maybe she thought I was going to have a discussion with her, but I think God is able to defend himself much better than I. And so I found the scripture that said that and labeled it. But before I did, I decided, let me go look and see who this lady is. Well, guess what? She does a lot of things that sound Christian. She even has a Bible study. My God, she calls it not the usual Bible study. I guess not. Okay. You know, what can I say? The devil can twist anything. He certainly tried to twist it with Jesus. So why wouldn't he try to mess with me, right?
That's true.
But the bottom line of it is her ultimate decision was, I don't want to follow you anymore. I said, fine, you know, bye.
You said she doesn't want to follow you anymore because of that?
Yes, because what I am saying comes in direct contrast to where she's going. You know, where she's going or where she is. Years ago, it was referred to as the age of Aquarius. I don't know, you're young, so maybe you don't even know anything about all of that. But
Age
that
of
was,
Aquarius? Never heard of it.
yes, the woman wrote a book about it. Okay. And people who want to be rich at any cost will easily fall into that kind of thing, because the devil can give you things just like God can give you, except God is going to give you what he has for you based on his plans and his purposes for your life. The devil will give you anything he needs to give you to get you to go to hell.
Wow. So true. So the
So,
effect of these negative beliefs, let's talk about that for a minute. We know it interferes with close relationships, but talk about the health problems that it results in.
physicians, if you look it up, they will tell you from 85 to 90% of whatever illness you have started with your mind.
85 to 90% of whatever illness you have started with the mind.
Your thoughts.
Wow.
And the people who really know about this are the Chinese. They've got it down to a science. If you go to a Chinese doctor, I'm talking about, a continental Chinese doctor operating under their rules. If you say, I'm having, for example, if you say I'm having heart problems, they will say, what, are you experiencing anger issues?
Wow. So they map the physical symptom to an emotional issue that you may be having, or they use it to determine
for
it.
hundreds and hundreds of years.
Wow.
I think that
that is no longer a dry conversation, because there's a lot of people in the hospital with all kinds of aches and pains. And there's a stigma around when you say you need to go get therapy or go get some mental health help. When clearly that's probably where it should start. When you start, before the physical pain starts, maybe if we're taking care of our souls, doing the self-care for the soul, then we would short circuit some of these long hospital stays. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, just real quick, I had a woman once. She was extremely angry. She came from somewhere in the Caribbean, and she came from a wealthy family, but her family treated her very poorly, and she decided to go to a medium to see how she could improve her life. And this medium told her that within X period of time, she was going to meet a man that came from America and she should marry him. And she did, and came over here. Well, this man was poor. A lot of times when people go in foreign places, they bring a certain amount of money and they give off a certain image. But this man was a janitor, She managed, I think she learned to love him, and she was an accountant, but she was very, very angry with her family. And that anger led to cancer, which killed her.
Oh, wow. Well, how could they tell for sure that was the anger that led to cancer?
Well, do the research, even here in America.
I think that the World Health Organization states that there's no health without mental health.
Wow. There is no health without mental health.
Without mental health, yes. It is a very famous quote of the World Organization, World Health Organization. And the May month is the month of the mental health awareness. And it started with this quote, there's no health without mental health. And many researchers, even before I know anything about the importance of mental health, I used to read and heard heard in many documentaries about health that some people who were at the hospital and who were experiencing some serious illness, when the doctor thinks that, okay, there's nothing else they can do as a medical solution, they try to improve the mental condition of the person. Let's say that they send the person in the kind of clinics but in fact it's a kind of mansion in a very beautiful places where they have trees and the nature sources, they have animals, they have a very different and beautiful environment, and they are treated, they have all the things that they have ever dreams about. Well, it was for wealthy people, but they see the improvement in the health.
Wow.
They see the improvement. And Dr. Brown said something which is very important about the improvement of our mental health is developing hope.
Developing hope.
Yes, the truth is that when the mental issues reach the point where the person lost hope, her condition become worse. Because
hope is the currency of life.
Yep.
I felt hopeless at times, and definitely when that happens, I definitely I feel like their life is not worth living. So I totally get that.
Mm.
But just to recap, the effects of negative beliefs interferes with relationships, which is another pivotal or critical thing to our well-being, close relationships. And it affects our health, all kinds of health problems. Dr. Brown just outlined how anger can lead to cancer. And it also it causes us to live below our capabilities. And I talked about how, because of my all or nothing thinking, for the longest time, I worked for different companies below my capacity, when in reality I should have been running a business. But because I didn't believe that I had all the things that I needed to have because of my thinking, I kept working for these companies. And to be able to compare my now with my then, only now can I see that, yeah, that was all or nothing thinking. And so the criticality that, how critical it is for us to recognize when we are having these distortions cannot be overstated, because it's that important. The difference is that huge from my all or nothing thinking then, because of my all or nothing thinking then, and the life I'm living now. So then the next thing is how to manage our negative mindset.
Right.
How do we do that?
So paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the negative patterns that we're going to discuss briefly, and it has to be briefly because these are things that take time and energy and effort. The idea is just to bring awareness here. You're not going to get the full explanation of it, but all of it, nothing thinking is where you make no room for middle ground. It's either this or that.
Okay, let me repeat that. All or nothing thinking is when we make no room for the middle ground. It's black or white. There's no gray.
Right.
Is that it?
We think that a small fault in ourselves means that we are fundamentally rotten or just plain terrible.
Wow.
For example, let's say you went for a job interview and maybe you made a little mistake because you're nervous. Well, someone with all or nothing thinking will think, I totally blew it. I'm an awful, rotten person. I'm never, ever going to get a job because something is just fundamentally wrong with me.
That sounds so extreme.
But that's what it is. all or nothing, black or white. There's stuff in between. There's no room for mistakes. It's kind of wanted to be a perfectionist.
Mm.
Yeah, which is only God is perfect. And believe it or not, all of these things have spiritual backgrounds. If we really want to see the full picture, we can't leave a piece of it out. That's cognitive distortion. When you decide you're just going to only focus on your body and your soul and forget your spirit, what? The spirit is what's influencing you. The spirit is what's talking to you and giving you those thoughts.
Mm. So it's a cognitive distortion also when we neglect to address our whole being, is what you're saying.
Well, if we think we're stupid and not important, yes, that's a couple of different distortions.
Wow.
The one where you call yourself names, that's called labeling. Or you call yourself names, or you call other people names. Yeah.
But today we're focused on the all or nothing thinking. Okay. So how to manage the negative mindset? They say the first step is to become aware of our ineffective ways of thinking, which you told us to pay attention to how we think, write it down, take notes, how we're feeling. And then the other thing is today's negative pattern of thinking that we're discussing is, I'm reading the notes here, it's all or nothing. Is there any other ways in which we can manage our negative mindset when it comes to all or nothing thinking?
Well, I think did you want to say something, Genevieve?
Yes, I have a question for the coach and the therapist. All we have discussed are so interesting and so important for a fulfilled life. And we can notice that many people go through these challenges, and they can go through these challenges for years and a long time. How a coach and a therapist can help to reach this point of awareness. I can say it quicker, because some people can stay in this challenge until they reach a very, serious degradation of their lives, their quality of life and mental health. And some people are not aware yet that they have to take in charge their attitude and if I can say it, the real causes, not only the consequences or the symptoms they see. So how I say that, because there's so many things I couldn't imagine and explain before I start coaching, before I start having a coach. So how the coach can be an efficient help to understand all this attitude problem in order to reach this altitude that we are all looking for.
So an important thing to remember, as sad as it is, it's very important. You can't help everyone because everyone doesn't want help.
Critical piece. We cannot, the coach says we cannot help everyone because not everyone wants help.
Everyone is not coachable.
Everyone is not coachable.
Very true.
Okay, but for those who are coachable, Dr. Brown, and who are willing to get the help, the question remains, how can we help them? That's the question, right, Genevieve? Get to this place of awareness before their lives reach a point of degradation, where they lose hope.
It has to be a joint venture. And really, as far as the coach is concerned, the coach is there to encourage the person and perhaps to point out situations that may be interfering.
Mhm.
But if people are stuck in their past, if people's pain is too great for them to move forward, and it doesn't take long to find that one out. You know, if you're sitting and coaching someone and both of you come up with, okay, this is the plan of action, and they never follow through with the plan of action, that's telling you they have pain that's interfering with them moving forward. And what could that pain be? Well, maybe they think they have to be perfect. Maybe they have all or nothing thinking. So, you know, if it's that, you can, you know, address that. But it might be even deeper than that. And
At that point, we can
that's
recommend
where
it to a psychotherapist.
Therapy, yeah.
Therapy.
Mhm.
So there's the coach, which is the first line of defense, would you say, Dr. Brown?
Well, I would say the coach is there for people who are emotionally healthy, but just need a little help in getting from A to B to C.
So make the distinction between the coach and the therapist.
And the therapist is there to deal with deeper issues, deeper unresolved issues. But even there, the person has to be willing to work, because the therapist can't jump in anybody's head and make them anything.
Right. So regardless if it's a coach or a therapist, the joint venture, there has to be a joint venture between the subject and the coach or the therapist. So regardless of which one, and usually in order to come to that awareness of what is best for you, you have to first come to the table to have the conversation. And this is why the eSpeaks platform exists. We are giving you the opportunity to be reborn from a personal development perspective, so that you can heal, aspire, and grow. And we are all here on the same journey. I am continuously healing, aspiring, and growing myself. So we are your biggest cheerleaders. And the motto here is that we are going to help you to have your life burst into colors, radiant colors of growth and personal development. And so if you come to the platform and you need to just have a conversation to figure out where you are, so you can, and tell us where you want to go, what's your vision for what you would like to become, then we can make an assessment about whether or not you need a coach, or if you need a Dr. Brown that can go deeper, which is
Dr. Brown is also a coach, by the way.
She's also a coach, but she's very much qualified to be a therapist. So we have both sides of the coin covered. And so please reach out. The opportunity definitely is here to have conversations that will definitely help you to raise your altitude, get to your altitude. Is there any last words that you want to share, Dr. Brown?
Well, I mentioned about that, the book, the Age of Aquarius. The book is called The Aquarian Conspiracy, and it was written in 1980 by a woman named Marilyn Ferguson. She has since died, so I guess she's dealing with whatever she's dealing with.
The age of the what? Of the Aquarian?
The Aquarian Conspiracy. And that's the rise of spiritualism. And it's still here. It's still here. A lot of famous people, rich famous people, are connected with it. As quiet as it kept, you know.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation today. Thank you for all your input. And again, we invite you to join us next time as we dig deeper into the cognitive distortion conversation, and for you to learn which distortion you may be engaging in that may be impacting your altitude. Definitely is a worthy conversation. We don't want to wait until our lives are in shambles and we're wondering, why am I at this place? Why am I stuck? Why am I here year after year after year? But if only you would take the time to do some self-exploration, you could short circuit that long and painful journey.
Mm.
Thank you so much again, Genevieve, Dr. Brown, Patricia, for this conversation. And
Thank
we'll see
you.
you next time
Okay.
as we discuss self-care for the soul. Have a good night.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.